like whether you're podcasting on a cell phone or in a studio with like a $10,000 equipment, podcasting, it's all storytelling. We're all storytellers, and you have 3 podcasts telling 3 very different stories. I mean, as do I. I do the wrestling one, I do this one, and I do Talking with Tara. Should essentially do the exact same thing here, just if they don't have a podcast. So what was your first experience with podcasts? Because most people who have a podcast started out listening to one however long ago, and they're like, you know what, I can do that. And then they start, and then they quit. And there's people like us who keep going. So what was your first experience?
So my first experience, honestly, they're almost simultaneous. I knew that my buddy had a podcast. Okay. And we had talked about it, and, because as podcasters do, hey, if you listen to my podcast, you should listen to my podcast. Have you heard about my podcast? It happens. I knew he had a podcast, but I hadn't really listened to it. But in the hospital, after a while, you need something to distract your mind. You need something to do. Out of the 97 days in the hospital, I was there for 95 of the 97 nights, and stayed in the hospital with my daughter. She was 12 at the time.
Wow.
And so there were 2 that I started listening to. There's one that Mike Rowe does, and he's kind of tells these quick little stories, like these little factoids behind the story. It's like the story behind the story. Everybody knows this portion of the story, but here's the portion that you don't know. And so at most they were like 10 to 15 minutes long and kind of fit my attention span because I was new to podcasts. On the other end of the spectrum, there was my buddy who had this other show that I was talking about. His is called the Curiosity Hour podcast. And I absolutely recommend that to anyone and everyone. It's a fantabulous show. That's my word, trademark. Don't use it. But it's a fantabulous show. And Tommy and his buddy Dan do a really great job at moderating some super cool discussions. They ask very in-depth, intriguing questions about things that are happening in the world around us, whether it's social issues, whether it's personal issues, whether it's somebody they just wanted to get on the show because they liked their music a lot and wanted to talk to them. I mean, it covers so many bases. Just whatever they're curious about, they have somebody come on and they talk about it. And so it's a really cool show. And so I had talked to Tommy about it, and he's the guy that suggested that, hey, maybe you should try a podcast. And that's how I got from point A to point B.